What's up, guys? It's James from James' Reptiles. Today is Should You Keep It Sunday, and we're going to be talking about what got me started in the reptile hobby, and that's leopard geckos. So, a little backstory of myself and how I got into the hobby. When I was 12 years old, me and a couple kids on my block, we would always go out and catch western fence lizards. There were a couple skinks around, some frogs. We'd always go catch those fence lizards. And then one day, one kid's parent bought him a leopard gecko, and then like 2 weeks later they bought him a crested gecko, and that was it. I was hooked. I saw those things, I saw the setups he got for him, and I'll tell you what, I was jealous. So not too long after that, I saved up a little bit of money. My mom actually paid for the most of it, and we went out and we bought a setup for a leopard gecko from Petco, and I was about 12 or 13, and it was just a normal male. And unfortunately, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't do the research, I took the advice of the people at Petco. I bought a 10-gallon. It had 2 light bulbs on it, the red bulb and the regular heat bulb. And of course, it was on gravel. So, unfortunately, that gecko didn't live past a couple months in my care. I was also feeding it dried mealworms, and no one in my family was going to allow me to have insects in the house at the time. But fast forward 6 years later, 5, 6, I was 17, 18. I was walking a lot actually after school and going outside a lot more. I started seeing those lizards again. I started seeing garter snakes, and it got me interested. One thing I love to do, I was a high school student, I was broke, I would go to the pet store and I would just look at pets all day. I would look at the animals, and the reptiles caught my eye. And the one thing they have excuse me, one very staple animal that they will have at just about every pet store that sells exotic animals is a leopard gecko. So I got my first leopard gecko again. His name is Malloy. I do still have him to this day. I've had him about 4 years. He actually got in with a male at one point, and they ended up fighting. So he's missing some toes. He's missing a chunk of his eyelid. He's got some scars, but at the end of the day, he's my first animal. He got me into this hobby right here. I'm not ever going to get rid of him. But leopard geckos. So I'm going to talk about the way I keep them versus how other people keep them, starting with temperature. So, how you get the temperature. Temperature is recommended that you always 90 to 94. I keep more 90. I do live in California. It stays pretty warm in the house, so ambient doesn't matter. I keep 90 on an under tank heater. I keep in a rack system. Leopard geckos in the wild, they do like caves, so I don't really see a problem with a rack system, a system for them. Unlike the crested geckos, certain things are better in racks and certain things aren't. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say everything should be in a rack to save money. I'm gonna be honest with myself, and these I think honestly can be in a rack as long as it's heated properly and everything's fine. They do absorb heat through their belly, so you can't really use above, like a light dome. One thing I would say is if you want to give UVB, that's okay in a light dome as long as it's not emitting heat, and as long as you understand how much they should be getting, because they are a nocturnal cave species. Now, I personally don't know what that is. I personally don't provide UVB, but it has been shown to give some benefits to animals. Now, size of enclosure, I say if you have 10-gallon is perfect. There are a lot of Facebook warriors out there and people on the internet who will say minimum of 20 gallons, and if you have if you're bold enough to house 2 geckos together, 40 gallons the minimum. My first gecko, Malloy, the one I was telling you about, I got when I was 17. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to care for I knew how to care for him. I was trying to get away with something, and I didn't really my parents didn't know 100% that it was there. They knew I had a couple random things in my room, but I had him in a 5.5 behind my bed, and he grew up and was an adult in that size tank. And unfortunately, that wasn't the best for him, and I understand that, but today I'll show a clip of him at the end of the video. I left him in his tub for now. He's a large adult male, and he's doing just fine. But I would say 10 gallons. I would say if you're going to add a second gecko, think about adding another 5 gallons per gecko. I keep in racks and 28 quart tubs, which you would normally see for a breeding setup for leopard geckos. I would say you can put 4 in a 28 quart tub. There's a lot of surface area for the animal. If you're going with the Visions, I can't remember the name of them, but they're maybe that big. They're like Vision 18s or something like that. That would be perfect for one adult, and you could even fit a lay box in there if you wanted to breed pairs at a time. I feed mine mealworms once a week, and I do dust with 4 parts calcium, 1 part vitamins, with D3. With D3? I can't remember with D3. That's something you're gonna have to look up on your own. I don't remember if I use that or not. But I do feed once a week mealworms, and I check everything a second time, and I add water during the week, and I also tongue feed dubia roaches. I don't feed crickets unless I have a gecko that actually is not thriving and I feel like it needs crickets. I like to tongue feed. It just connects me with the geckos better. So real quick, I'm gonna go over this male right here. And I actually know a lot about the morph, so if anyone has questions, hit me up. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can leave it in the comments. You can email me at jamesjeptiles@gmail.com. This right here, you see how it's got almost the beads and then it gets flat. That's a regenerated tail right there. When a gecko, they're threatened or their tail is bitten, they'll actually drop their tail and it'll keep wiggling and it'll heal up and eventually grow a new one, but they won't be able to drop it until the next segment. Now this is just how I got this gecko. I got him from a guy at work, and also you can see underneath the armpits are these big sacs, and what those are actually calcium. It just means he has extra calcium built up. I'm actually feeding this gecko specifically, not dusted crickets. Not crickets, dubia. So when obviously I dust his worms just like normal, make sure he's getting some calcium and vitamins, but I'm not dusting the dubia. I feed him on tongs once a week. He kind of is a mystery morph. I was told what morph he is, but I don't really believe it. I was told he was Eclipse Het Bell. He kind of looks Eclipse. I can't really trust that he's Het Bell just because the guy that I got him from. This gecko right here is what you would call a Bell albino. She's not the biggest. And kind of the reason for that, and you see this a lot in snakes, is she was bought by a buddy of mine as a baby from the place that we both worked at the time. And he didn't feed her a ton. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing with these kind of exotic animals that don't eat a lot, but it just means they won't get as big. And there's a lot of cases where you get a corn snake and if you power feed it, it might end up 5-6 feet. But if you don't, you can get it adult size and mature enough within 3 to 4 feet. And that's a big difference, and it's not really a health concern either way, unless it's to the extreme. It's kind of a preference almost. These two girls right here are lefty and righty. They are my twin Tug Snows. They're not actually twins at the egg. They're from 2 different breeding projects of twin Snows, of Tug Snows, but they're each missing a hand right there. For one of them had a really bad shed when it was a baby, and at the exact same time the other one had its arm, its hand, its wrist stuck in the ledge of the tub when the tub was pushed in. And I saw these 2 animals at work. They were in the same rack actually. I have all the parent info and everything. And I said, you know what? I want both these animals. It's not really a good selling point for my boss to try to sell them to someone else online. It doesn't look good for the company. Just sell it to me. Just made absolute sense to him. So I took in both those animals. For substrate, there are, again, a lot of Facebook warriors who won't tell you to use loose substrate. They say it's deadly, it's dangerous, it's horrible. Personally, I use paper towel just because it's easy. There's no way it can really attract any insects or anything from outside. Without naming where I work, because I haven't said it in any of my videos, no one knows where I work specifically. We breed 30,000 leopard geckos. We have 30,000 leopard geckos in the building, if not more. And we keep on sand. We keep on loose substrate at my job. 30,000 leopard geckos. Now, it's a calcium-based sand, so if they do happen to digest it, most of it's going to get digested anyway and kind of dissolve. But it's a loose substrate. So, again, I've had a gecko die from loose substrate. We have this many geckos on loose substrate, and we don't have significant loss. And honestly, we don't have any loss that I even personally could tell was because of the substrate. So depends on the substrate, depends on the gecko, depends on the person, depends on your preference. If you're just starting out, I recommend paper towel or newspaper or something of that matter. Just precautionary. Leopard geckos, housing them together, females can definitely be housed together as long as they're not dominating each other for food. If you see that, if you want to house two together, have a secondary fund, $100 to $150 set aside just in case you need to go buy another setup, just in case your geckos don't get along. I do not recommend housing males and females long term unless you're trying to breed, and if you're trying to breed, you shouldn't be watching this because you should already know about leopard geckos and you should have been keeping them for a little bit and you should understand them in your own way. And of course that's what I recommend, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you want to do. I understand that, I've done that. You just have to learn your own mistakes. But humidity wise, I don't worry about humidity at all with my leopard geckos. As long as it's not humid, they're fine. They're a desert animal, it's fine. They have a water dish, I keep it full all the time. I've heard people say that because they're such a desert animal, you don't need a water dish. And then at the same time, I've seen geckos with dry water dishes and you go to add water and they rush over and they start drinking. So you tell me, right? They kind of sounds like they feel like they want water. There's not much else with leopard geckos. They're pretty simple. There's a reason they're a staple and they're cheap and they're in the hobby and just about everyone has one. There's lots of beautiful morphs out there and there's lots of mutations and all sorts of fun stuff. If it's something you feel like you would like to get into, do more research, watch more videos, and if you still have questions, get in contact with people who breed them and people who work with them. And don't take advice from Petco or PetSmart, and sometimes even your local reptile store. I'm James from James' Reptiles. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'm going to show you some footage of my male leopard gecko, Malloy, who I've had for about 4 years. So this here is Malloy. He's very clearly a male based on size, and working with so many leopard geckos every day, you can tell a lot of features. Males have quite thicker necks, and if we just take a look at the undercarriage, you can see the pores, and if you look closely, you can see two bulges. Male, obvious male. You can see where he got into a fight. He's missing a little bit of eyelid right there. He's missing two toes on his front foot, and you might not be able to see it, but there are some scars somewhere on him. I'm not too proud of that. It just, I had a barrier between him and another gecko. I was trying to save space on a tub, and that barrier came down. It wasn't sturdy, and they fought overnight, and Malloy basically lost that fight. So it's too late to turn back time, but at the end of the day, this is my gecko, and I'm going to keep him forever, and I'm going to treat him well. All right. Have a good video, and you should keep leopard geckos. Have a good video. Have a good day.